Yes. Sick.
Yeah, it's so clever.
Synchronize the audio.
Yeah, you have to do that in science too.
Really?
You have to sync sensors. Any time series data is time series data. Doesn't matter if it's muscle activity, brain activity. So like you can use like a very hard physical contact between two sensors, for example, and that will give you a nice spike you can use.
Nice. Well, anyway, let's just, unfortunately I have to do this.
That's not how to start. Unfortunately, I have to do this.
No. I mean the introduction.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good. I mean, that you should also be excited about that.
There's a name.
Yes.
And the name I'm happy with, but I have to say it as many times as possible to just make it be used to it. Okay. Anyway, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Good Luck With It podcast.
Nice.
I'm here with Professor?
I guess I just teach here. Teacher.
Yeah. Teacher Beorn Nijenhuis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Your name is not spelt Beorn in the way that I thought, actually.
Yeah.
It's with an E and an O.
Yeah, no, I mean, my parents were old hippies, and they moved to Canada, and and my mom was a librarian when her first job was a librarian, and she loved The Hobbit, reading The Hobbit to young children. So the name Beorn comes from the creature in The Hobbit that's like this huge dude who like helps the hobbits out on their journey, and Beorn is a really weird spelling, and I frankly don't really know how to pronounce my own names. I just say Bjorn, so that's good.
Yeah, everyone just says Bjorn, yeah. I want to ask you, how did you get into teaching here, into a music school? Do you have any music connections?
Very little, actually. So I think she stumbled into this building during a presentation called Managing Your Talents. It was one of these weekend events that the conservatory was holding where they invited a lot of people over to talk about the science of performance, neuroscience, and also they invited a bunch of people who were involved in sports to talk about motivation, influencers. But this was many years ago. This was like 8 or 9 years ago. And I had this opportunity to just be a guest at this thing, and I heard all of these professionals and, experts, domain-specific experts in sports talking about all of these connections between sport and music. And I was skeptical because at the time I was doing my bachelor in neuroscience after, finishing my sports career because I used to do professional sports. And I just heard all of these athletes and all of these, motivational coaches and stuff saying all these things that I didn't wholly agree with or relate to from my sports career. And also I couldn't relate to a lot of it from what I was learning at a fast pace during my bachelor's in neuroscience. And so I sensed that there was an opportunity there, that there was a niche that had not been filled, which was to bring very quantitatively robust and very well-studied research about performance and performance psychology to the conservatory from a scientific standpoint, but also from the standpoint of someone who is reading the science through the prism of my former career as a professional athlete. So I just went to one of the directors of education here. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. Is that possible? And he's let me teach here now for the last 7 years. So that's great.
And you do some lectures for the masters, and did you also start doing that with the bachelors back then as well?
Yeah, so I've been teaching the bachelor courses now for like 3 years as well. My master's elective course has been going now for 5 or 6 years here at the conservatory. I also done some teaching at the pop department of the conservatory as well, which was really fun.
Oh yeah.
So my main course is my elective course to the master's students, called Patterns of Performance, and it is essentially the complete, it's like a compendium of everything that I've learned from my career as an athlete and as a neuroscientist, rolled into one and filtered and distilled in a way that I hope is as useful as possible to the students from a practical standpoint. So half of it is theory, and the other half is practical applications to the degree that I can figure that out. Yeah.
And also for the bachelor's, you do patterns of personality. And that one I didn't take. And I was always wondering what that was really about.
Yeah, so the bachelor courses, the master's course is a big fat course, right? And it requires a lot of teaching and a lot of focus and a lot of concentration from the students. What I wanted to do with the bachelor courses was take some of the key elements of this big fat course, patterns of performance, and break it up into its subsequent structures that its subcategories that are small enough and more palatable and more easily digestible over the shorter period of the classes that the bachelor students have. And so for that reason, I split it up into one course about personality and another course about, exercise and movement, health and vitality, pretty much. Those are the two main ones. Yeah. And it's not just that it's more palatable, but it also gives me opportunity to work on those two subjects separately and try to build curriculum around them where I'm not making as many connections between the two, but I'm focusing more on one or more on the other. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one that I did was the Beorn exercise.
Yeah.
That was very good. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
It was one of the best electives I ever took. Yeah, I mean, if I may say a little bit about it, it was... very practical. I think within the first few lessons, you gave me a heart rate variability measurement device. Told me to play around with it. If we could go into a bit of that, HRV.
Yeah. Within the context of a course like that, we have the time to go very deep, right, into one specific subject. In this case, it was related to stress, right?
Yeah.
But to back up for a second and take a slightly wider view, there is obviously a lot of talk and a lot of interaction right now in the world around health, right, and wellness. And the health and wellness industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's growing extremely fast. A lot of people are making their careers as social media influencers on the back of the concept of being healthy, right? And the reason I say that is because they're making their careers off the back of the concept of being healthy, as opposed to necessarily the actual science and facts behind it. And that's a really dangerous place. There's a huge amount of misinformation out there because of that fact, right? And that, so my major kind of, I'm not going to say secret goal, but my clandestine goal here is to be constantly trying to improve the baseline levels of well-being, because I know that is going to make people a lot smarter here. Your cognitive acuity drastically improves when you're working on very specific aspects of your health and well-being. And so you're going to be a better musician, and there's going to be no way of measuring this, right? I mean, I come from a world, right, because I used to do professional sports. I was a speed skater for many years, right? And I come from a world where we can measure almost anything you want to measure. And even in a world where we can measure anything, including the final result, right? To the 100th millisecond, to the 100th of a second, to the millisecond, we know exactly how fast you are in these races, right? And even in our world where we can do this, we still don't know exactly what the recipe is to go faster, right? We just don't know this. In music, right, in a place like this, it's impossible to know this. It's impossible to get any kind of idea of what the knobs are that you want to turn from a variable standpoint in order to really see a lot of improvement, right? And so instead of trying to get extremely targeted and specific, right, the first thing to do, the first question to ask is, what are the really basic things that I can teach at this place that is going to make people cognitively sharper and better. And then because of that, really improve. And one of them is stress, reducing stress. And one of the ways of doing that, at least in the exercise course, and specifically in your case, was to start talking about these ways of measuring stress in a way that's a little bit better than just asking yourself in the morning, how stressed am I? And one of those ways is heart rate variability. Yeah. And so heart rate variability, what you were mentioning, to make it very, very simple, your heart beats at a very specific rhythm throughout the day, right? And it deviates, as you walk up the stairs, it goes higher. And as you're resting in your bed, it goes quite a bit lower, right? But what's more interesting than how fast it's beating with relation to stress is how regular the beat is. Because if your heart is beating very regularly, you might suppose that means that you're very relaxed, but it's the exact opposite. A very regular heartbeat indicates that your body is very interested in making sure that blood is flowing very regularly because it's worried something's going to happen. Some kind of stress, some kind of problem, right? And so the moment your heart and your nervous system decides, hey, you know what? I really think I'm safe, for the last hundreds of thousands of years, as humans have evolved, one of the main things we tried to do was not die. And to do that, one of the key ways of doing that was to stay safe. And so your nervous system, even before we became conscious creatures, is interested in that, right? And so if it thinks it's safe, right, then the heart will literally take a beat, forgive the pun. And it will just wait a little bit and then beat, and then wait and then beat, and then maybe beat a little faster for a couple beats and then slow down a little bit. And this irregularity, that is high heart rate variability. And we know that high heart rate variability, that correlates with a lower level of stress. And so in your case, in our class, one of the things we wanted to look at was where your stress was, but even more fun, we wanted to look at your stress levels, and we wanted to do something to change those. And then we wanted to see if it changed your heart rate variability, which is a fun experiment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think doing it over a long time was what we had to do.
Yeah.
With a long period of time. And then you have these great graphs, showing you everything that happens.
So, in this game of trying to help students here be healthier, I think the most important priority for me is to have an incredibly broad spectrum when it comes to how I try and help people, when it comes to the interventions and the advice that I try to give. So, let's put you on the spot for a second. You are obviously someone who is very interested in sports and fitness. And you are also someone who is very involved in the sense that you are doing a lot of these things. And you're doing them at, compared to an average person, a really high level. And the most important part about that is that you like it. You are a hobbyist, right? And so, these classes at the conservatory, they're often very small. And so we had a lot of time with each other. And I had a lot of individual opportunity to interface with you on a very individual level. And so we could go very deep on your areas of expertise and get really specific. Yeah. But what I've learned teaching here is that I have to be prepared to help the majority of people. The majority of people are not at your level of expertise and knowledge when it comes to these things. They have no idea what heart variability is, nor do they want to know, to be honest. And so in your case, we went really deep, and I could do some really fun experimentation that gave you good evidence that, like, hey, these interventions are working, right? Whereas with a lot of the students here, my main goal is to get them, we were talking about before, my main goal is to get them to walk up the stairs more.
Yeah.
To their class.
Okay.
Right. And so one of the things I'm curious about, I've actually had some master's students recently who have done some thesis work on this. Have you noticed at all a change in the amount of priority given to health and exercise and health improvement in either direction with the students throughout the time you've been here?
With my colleagues, let's say,
Yeah,
or just students in general.
yeah, both, yeah.
Yes,
Really?
but I say that just because I found out. I'm not sure if this is confidential, but the study advisors here, whenever there's a student in distress, they give them a free gym membership for 6 months. I don't think that happened when we were having lessons, because I remember we spoke about it, and I said the only free option was this outdoor gym there, and you were like, it's not coming from the rain, so it's not a good option. Yeah, it rains all the time. But now they do this. I think that's good. It's a good improvement.
Excellent. Yeah.
But then I don't know if they do it. That's the thing. I don't know if they go there. They get given it for free.
Yes. But then there they go.
I don't know. It's really difficult to say. There's always a few people who like the gym here, and you see them in the gym. Have you? Yeah, would you say it?
No.
Even after you did the experiment with the zone 2 cardio?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I haven't.
Really?
No, I mean, this is an incredibly hard problem, right? This is an incredibly difficult problem. It's a very fascinating one, and so I'm like emotionally invested in trying to figure out how to solve it. Because here's what we have, right? We have a group of individuals at this school who, in general, know what it is to put a huge amount of work into getting better at a very specific thing, to improving on a very specific task, a very specific modality, right? And they've managed it to a great extent. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
So they have dedication. A lot of them know what it is to go through this sort of a journey, right? And so it's not a lack of motivation. It's not a lack of motivational capacity. It's not a lack of understanding of like wisdom when it comes to what is required to do a lot of work to get better at a particular thing. To a degree, I've had done a lot of lessons here. I've tried really hard to like inform students as to the importance of this when it comes to their health and how these knock-on effects of improving their health actually improve their brains and make them better musicians. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I have some ideas, but it's a really hard problem.
Yeah.
And it's a specific one to this place. Like in like underprivileged neighborhoods and environments where there just simply is not a culture to help people understand a lot of these things. A lot of these things aren't known and understood. In situations where there are insufficient resources, that's often clear the reasons why people have difficulty.
Yeah.
I don't think that those are the major issues here.
No, especially in Amsterdam, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a gym right down here. Not that the gym is necessarily the right way for people to exercise, but like you said, that I think that the directorate here and the administration is honestly trying to improve on these things.
I think so.
So I am at a loss.
But
A little bit.
I just thought of a quick theory, perhaps. I think most people here, they did very well to get here. Music, that was their passion, I think some people didn't have the luxury of doing that alongside sport. Because I did a podcast with my brother, and one thing we dished about a lot was how we're so grateful that we sort of had two sort of streams of income in that way. Because as a kid, you enjoy it so much that you don't forget the joy when you're an adult. And that's why I definitely continue to exercise, because it's just brings me joy.
That's partly it. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a question of resources and it's a question of culture. Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree with that. That's definitely part of it. I find it interesting. You say, you really enjoyed it and you really loved it. Some of my most interesting students are those that will just unabashedly tell me, I hate it. I hate exercise. Yeah. And they won't, they won't, tie any bows around it. And they don't care what I think about that, right? You have the students who just have that level of honesty and confidence to,
I respect that.
yeah, I do too. And I want to figure out how to motivate them to do this. And so, and really, so my partner, she is, she's a lawyer, and before we met, she really never had done any exercise, and she was lucky to have a relatively high metabolism, and so she never, she was the envy of all of her friends as she smeared like millimeter layers of butter on all her bread, and they're all wondering how it's possible.
Was it grass-fed
No,
butter?
ballooning. Yeah, no, she was Irish special Irish butter. Yeah, it's her favorite thing. But like before we were together, she never did any exercise, and I knew like she's a very stubborn, strong-willed human being. There's no way on God's green earth that I am going to convince her of doing anything, let alone something that she finds profoundly unpleasant, which is exercising. So, and I knew that very early on in our relationship. So I did not push. Right, I did not push. And but what I did do was as part of my course and as part of doing research for my lectures, I started to discuss all these fascinating papers that I found where it showed that the role of exercise on your nervous system and your brain is maybe bigger than on your muscles and your bones and your joints. That it is this kind of fountain of cognitive improvement and cognitive acuity that you essentially drink from every time that you do exercise. Not only is it incredibly good for your nervous system, and it actually improves your cognitive capacities on a day-by-day basis, but it also drastically reduces the likelihood of getting dementia and Alzheimer's later in your life. And I say this unironically, and I didn't know this before I started doing this research, and actually a lot of this research is quite new, but turns out I think that exercise probably has a larger impact on your brain and your ability to think over the course of your life than it actually has on your muscles and your bones and your joints. I know that's true I don't know that's true, but it's very likely that is true based on the research that we have right now. And also it's much more true for certain kinds of exercise over others. But this information I presented to her just in conversation. This is interesting. I saw that there was this book about this. Interesting. I was reading this book. And so sure enough, I managed to get her to read some of the important sections of this book. And that was the thing. So that's also what I've tried to do a lot more here at the conservatory, which is just appeal to people's true passion and motivation, which is often just to become a better musician, and how effective it is to do that.
Yeah, you're trying to shock them a bit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I found it quite shocking myself to discover, it also makes sense when I think about it. But yeah, I think it is quite shocking that, there's a marked higher likelihood of developing early onset Alzheimer's and dementia if you don't do exercise regularly and continuously throughout the later portions of your life. And by later portions, I mean the period after which evolution essentially has said, we're done with you, which is about, historically speaking, about 35 to 40 years old.
One time we went to the gym together. That was amazing. I have been doing Turkish get-ups ever since.
Sick. That's so good.
Turkish get-ups. Researching.
Yeah. They're hard, they're great.
So great. I mean, they don't have to be that hard.
No.
You can even do it with nothing.
You can do it with nothing. I mean, it's one of these things that just also speaks to this whole like kind of burgeoning new culture around like bodyweight exercise and stuff like that. I mean the way a lot of the times the nutrition industry and the health industry and the fitness industry, they can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see the forest for the trees. They get completely obsessed about this one tiny little tree, this one aspect, this one extremely narrow perspective on this thing that we call whatever, nutrition, physical exercise, whatever. And then they obsess about it and they make it everything. And they completely lose perspective. And then this becomes the thing that everybody has to talk about, and then everybody has to do, right? And then a little bit of time goes by, and a bunch of scientists and, well, to be honest with you, a bunch of PhD students struggling to get their PhDs in the ivory towers of academia, propose to their professors and their PIs, hey, let's do some research on this because it's all the rage right now. There's so much hype around this. It must be amazing, right? And then they do all the studies over the course of 2 or 3 years, and they write their papers, and their results are mediocre at best, and they show small effect sizes that show a little bit of improvement, right? But they're so desperate to get their PhDs that they publish the papers anyways, even though the statistical analyses are insufficiently high, but that doesn't matter. And then the scientists who actually have a job, far fewer of them because it's a pyramid scheme, academics, these people, what do? They collect all of these papers together and they create a meta-analysis. And this meta-analysis shows that the effect is almost zero for this particular amazing thing that only 3 years ago everybody was crazy about. And then finally, these meta-analyses slowly trickle down into the collective consciousness, and everybody comes to their senses and realizes finally, this wasn't a big deal. It wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't going to make all the difference. And so what happens? Do we learn our lesson? Do we start to take a step back and start to look at the forest instead of the individual trees? No. We just move the periscope of our stupid attention 3.5 centimeters over and focus on the next thing that we think is going to be the absolute most important thing. And it's just crazy. And let me tell you, there's many reasons why I know this. As a scientist, it's exhausting, but of course it's publish or perish in science, and it's a pyramid scheme. So you do what you have to do. But as a scientist, this is exhausting. But as a former athlete, it's equally exhausting. And what you realize is that the reason why the vast majority of actually successful professional athletes are so conservative is because they know that if they start following all of these stupid trends, they're going to exhaust themselves, start running around in circles, and the next thing you know, they aren't professional athletes anymore because someone else has passed them by. I've seen it happen.
Wow.
And so, and this is the truth. Like this is what people who are inside the world of sports knows. This is what the people outside of the world of sports don't know, is that in the United States, the most intelligent and the most successful labs and universities with the most intelligent students are spending millions, maybe even billions of dollars on sports science and technology around sports science. And what most people don't realize is that the vast majority of that never has a real impact on athletes, and that doesn't actually make them better. The amount of time spent technologically pursuing and scientifically pursuing improvement in performance, the amount of time doing that compared to the amount of time actually realizing gains, it's a huge disparity that people don't realize. And so now to add to this, I'm just going to say it. You guys don't care about swearing, right?
No, but we can believe it.
To add to this sandwich, right? We have social media, right? So now you have this layer of opportunistic scientists doing opportunistic science to get particular results, which overinflate the importance of all of these things that make us completely lose perspective. And then on top of that layer, you have these journalists and these media organizations that are trying to find a quick story, right? So they're overly interested in publishing a lot of the stuff that isn't actually that important. And then on top of that layer, now you have all these social media influencers who troll traditional media for the stories they think are going to get the most hits, and then they try to blow those up even more. And here's the result of it, right? Because I've been talking in abstractions for a long time. Here's the result. The result is this. Everybody decides that the next thing that's going to change their lives is, for example, just taping their mouth shut. Now, I gave you that advice, or we'll give you that advice. We talked about how it might help, right? And you did it, and it did help a little bit. But are you still taping your mouth every night? No, right? And why not? Because however interesting a lot of these small and possibly slightly interesting interventions and improvements and techniques and strategies are, in the broader scheme of things, they're little trees in a big forest. And you have to take a step back and define the forest, right? The forest is not mouth taping. The forest, as much as I love them, is not Turkish get-ups. They're great. But the forest is, when it comes to physical movement, is that regular, consistent movement that is diverse in the same way that a good diet is diverse, that has no goal other than being consistent over the rest of your life, right? Relatively low impact, involving a diversity of movements. That is the forest, right? It's the forest is first, and this is also, for me, this is what matters, right? What matters is, number one, you get aerobic exercise, meaning your heart has to beat relatively high, so that when you're trying to talk to a friend of yours, you can't necessarily talk to them. You could for a little bit, but you would rather not, right? That's type 2, type 3 cardio. You do that in some form 3 times for 45 minutes every week. Other than that, you have some fun. You go play tennis one day. You go swimming another day. You go, I don't know, hang on some monkey bars in the playgrounds every once in a while. You go on a walk, right? You do a diversity of exercises around that. Every once in a while, if you see something heavy and you feel relatively fit and warm and flexible, pick it up and then put it back down again a couple times. That's weights, right? Like, this is the forest, right? This is what people should be doing. And instead, everyone gets completely obsessed and narrowly focused on these small things, and they completely miss it.
Yeah.
We've done it in exercise. I could have given the whole diatribe that I just gave you, the whole this whole editorial spiel that I just blurted out, right? I could have done this whole thing about nutrition in the exact same way. What have we been doing? We've been obsessed with salt. We've been obsessed with fat. It's the same thing.
Yeah. But the salt thing is quite interesting because I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of scientists in the 1970s started to find very clear correlations, or what they thought were very clear correlations, between high blood pressure, heart disease, and high salt content.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
I mean, yeah, sure. But no, actually, no, that's just not the case, that salt is the real enemy here. It just isn't, right?
Well, I mean, an example of that, it's not quite the same, but you told me an example once of the study of these New York lawyers or something being paid to take a rest.
Yeah.
They are told to have a rest, and then they have better productivity afterwards. But then I didn't know, it said somewhere else actually that they were not allowed their devices.
Yeah.
So that's the blame. Probably with sugar as well. There's probably bigger things.
Well, yeah. So, like, the forest there is like so. Okay. So here's the tree. Here's the metaphorical tree that everyone focused on and lost their minds about, and also pulled all of this completely out of proportion when it comes to this thing, right? Okay. So this study, it's, by the way, small study, like not replicated in any kind of large sample size, or there's not been a lot of really great research done on subjects like this. But let's just assume for a second that this study was good, it was real and was really good. In this study, they looked at these lawyers and they found that essentially the punchline is, they're working at a low level all the time, but their productivity is better if they're working at a high level with much more truncated and clear breaks in between. So much more truncated work periods, and followed by much more clearly and much more clearly distinct rest periods, right? And I obviously teach this a class partly about how to pattern organize your life in a way you can be more productive. So this is a great paper for me, right? Now the tree here that everybody focused on was, we're spending too many hours working, right? We should work less. We should work fewer hours and be more focused during those periods when we're working. That was the tree that everyone focused on, right? But the forest here, from my standpoint, is no, not necessarily that you should be working fewer hours, not necessarily. Simply the fact that this simple and most important takeaway here is that having a higher amplitude of intensity and focus, followed by periods of detaching from the subject matter and doing something else, and then coming back to that thing, that increase in the amplitude of the time off and the time on, that is what is most important. And so, it's there's a lot of research showing that students in sports, in school, often do better with their academics. And one of the ways we can interpret that is, oh, well, so it's because their brain is getting better because of the exercise. Sure, that's part of it. But another part of it is that because they are doing another activity that's also grueling and very difficult, it creates a starker contrast between the time they're focusing on their homework and the time they're doing something else. And the increased starkness and in the increased distance and the increased intensity of the contrast between those two things, that is likely the thing that is creating better results when it comes to their academics. So the takeaway I get from that lawyer example is not that the lawyers have to sit on a beach and scroll TikTok for 3 or 4 hours of rest during their weekend as opposed to working. It's that they should detach from their work, and they can go and do something that is equally grueling or difficult, or emotionally challenging. Like if they work for an NGO and then they're doing some volunteer work, and maybe they're taking a trip into the inner city and working with youth that are like have serious developmental deficiencies or psychological issues. This stuff is extremely hard, but I bet you if they did that study, they would find those lawyers were made just as much progress as if they were taking a rest, right?
Yeah. So you suggest that also for probably everyone?
Yeah, for sure. Like that's the thing. It's the contrast, right? Your nervous system craves novelty and contrast. And it's no coincidence that openness to experience, the personality trait that is so deeply correlated with, openness to experience, having the kind of personality and the kind of mind that is constantly hungry and curious for taking in new information, novel things, right? It's no surprise that is correlated strongly with intelligence and all other metrics of success, right? Because these people are hungry, and the hunger forces them to detach and reattach in ways that is more effective when it comes to learning and getting better.
Whoa. How would you suggest someone to, how would you help someone filter out a lot of this noise about buy this product?
It's getting so much harder, right?
It's getting hard.
Like, it was hard enough already. Like, it was hard enough when it was only the scientists whose incentive structures were fucked up by needing to publish papers on research that is barely significant, right? And which has been p-hacked to death. meaning that because they're so desperate to publish this paper, they did 50 tests, right? They did 50 statistical tests on the data, and they found that 10 of them were significant. And they just happened to, they just happened to coincidentally forget about the 40 tests that they did that were non-significant, right? If they were included in the full analysis, it makes those other tests non-significant. Just like if you're rolling a dice and you're really interested in getting 2, yes, it's surprising if you get it on the first roll, but if you get it on the 15th roll, it's not surprising, nor is it significant.
Oh, I
right?
see.
Yes.
Is that how it works?
That is how a lot of science gets published that should not get published. Yes.
So then would you have to like mitigate that? Would you then only give them one chance?
Well, exactly. That's exactly how it should work, and there is a mechanism to do that. And the way the way you do that in science is you do a pre-reporting of the tests you're going to do. Meaning you can't do any other tests. These are the tests you do. And so the way that happens is that they report the thing they're going to look at and the test they're going to do to figure it out. And if you've done that and you pre-submitted that, then you're stuck to those, right? And you do those tests and they come out negative and you're done.
They're done, yeah.
Find another thing to study.
But that's all right, isn't it? If you're done,
Barely any scientists do it.
Really?
Yeah.
They just keep doing it.
Welcome to behind the curtain of completely legitimate, I was a pun I didn't mean to say, of completely legitimate, really essentially just condoned scientific prod.
But is that completely fair then? Just one time, maybe 3 times would be.
Well, I mean, actually, it's a perfect. You can do a statistical analysis that gives you an exact number that you can of tests you can do, right, while still remaining significant. A multiple analysis of variance is one of these tests you can do, where you're testing a bunch of stuff together within the analysis as a whole. Anyway, it was bad enough when it was just the scientists that were screwing around, right? But now it's also all the social media influencers, right? And a whole media landscape that has completely lost any sense of propriety or, morals and ethics around the truth and like providing people with something that's actually, useful. So now, because that's now the case, right, it's become even harder. And this is a simple signal to noise question. This is a signal to noise problem. The signal, right, pulling that out of the noise being this cacophony of bullshit that's being produced by all of these thousands and literally thousands of people yelling about the fact that your sunscreen should be a mixture of zinc and animal fat now. It's just like, so I mean, I don't want to like cover specific things in too much detail, but suffice it to say, I've done what I consider to be too much research on this subject based on a lot of questions that I got exactly like the one that you just gave me. And the fact of the matter is that sunscreen is incredibly safe. Chemical sunscreens are incredibly safe, incredibly effective, and zinc sunscreens, albeit effective to a degree, are often less effective.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of, I mean, not in a country like this where there's almost ever any sun, but in the likelihood of getting skin cancer in a country where there's a lot of sun is very high. So just keep wearing your normal sunscreen.
Also, just wear like hats.
Yeah,
That's so good.
exactly. Yeah.
Also, like these little sleeves.
I mean, okay, so here's something. Okay, so we won't spend too much time on this, but specifically related to sunscreen and sunscreen-related questions. I mean, it's no surprise to you that I probably should wear more sunscreen than I do, looking at the fact that I'm white as. Yeah, exactly. So like, I'm translucent. So obviously, I should be wearing a lot of sunscreen, right? The amount of damage that electromagnetic radiation from the sun does to your body, does to your skin, is crazy, right? And we've had sunscreen for a long time, but you notice that if people are very consistent and very systematic with the use of sunscreen over their entire lives, even when they're young, they look amazingly young compared to other people.
Precisely.
It is insane, the difference, right? And so it's just one of these gimmies, right? It's just one of these like giveaway things that you should just do, like that old weird song from the 90s said, wear sunscreen. That is, anyways, that's a bit of a tangent, but.
No, but I think it's important. It's now getting hotter,
Yeah. So I guess the point, coming back to what we were talking about before, is like, a lot of the way I think is most effective to cut through the noise and the is okay. So here's a strategy. Here's like an actual strategy that I give to my students as well, right? I'm amazed that in this conversation we haven't mentioned artificial intelligence yet, because it is the 4,000-pound gorilla in the room right now. I mean, it is the thing that is taking over like everything, right? And it might be a huge bubble, and we might hit a wall, and this is all the progress we get for a couple of years. I don't think we will, but even if we do, the world has already changed completely based on what we already have from these technologies. And I'll give you an example of that, right? You have a question about this, you could go online and listen to a whole bunch of stupid social media influencers who don't have any scientific background in the subject, yelling about what they think the right idea is to do. Most of them are almost certainly wrong, especially because they're all incentivized not to be right. They're incentivized to get you to look at their shit, right?
Yeah.
So you could do that, or you go on to one of the free models that provide you with the capacity to search. So like OpenAI's model gives you some searches even with the free model. If you have the subscription, you get many more. Google's model 2.5, Gemini 2.5 Pro 0605 is an incredible model, and you can use that for free to a certain degree with search, right? And Notebook LM is a part of the Google Gemini model, right? So that's an option as well. Perplexity is also there. You go onto one of these platforms, right? And you ask it to search for the biggest meta-analyses that have been done on the subject. So in my whole diatribe about how science is broken, I said, eventually, the people who are actually getting paid to do science, and so who aren't beholden to anyone, will do meta-analyses, which means a collection of all of these papers together to see if the thing is actually doing anything, right? To see if anything is actually happening, whether it's tallow-based sunscreen, mouth taping, Turkish get-ups, whatever it is, right? They will do a meta-analysis to figure out whether something is actually there, whether there's a there, right, to use an overused phrase. And when they do, they write a fancy paper that is pretty much illegible and unreadable to the 99% of the population, right? And so in my area of expertise in neuroscience, in neurological movement disorders that involve motor cortical dysregulation of the basal ganglia, in that area, right, I've read a lot of meta-analyses there, and I'll read those and I'll love it, right? But for the vast majority of people who aren't in that field of expertise, they'll have no idea what's going on. For the vast majority of areas of science where I have zero expertise, I will have no idea what's going on, right? And so what I do in those areas is I find those meta-analyses, not to read them, no, to download them in PDF form or to link them, to put them in Notebook LM, and then to have the most intelligent models in the world parse them very carefully using all of their smarts to answer one single question, which is there a there there? And not only is there a there, but is there a there that matters? In other words, is it something that's actually impactful, right? And it'll give you a relatively accurate answer as long as you put the model's nose on the papers, right? You can't just ask the model. You have to download the meta-analyses from the smart scientists who have done all the work. And then you put those into Notebook LM or attach it into OpenAI or whatever. Make sure it's a good model, though, a thinking model. They'll actually reflect upon it and maybe do a couple of its own internet searches. And then, once that's done, he'll give you an answer. And then you'll know. Or at least, you'll know what we know. Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. And you can do that with, now, that is the big revolution when it comes to this. is you can do that with pretty much anything. You can do that if you want to know the relative risks of the COVID vaccine vis-a-vis all of the most important research that has been done on the subject by the best scientists in the world. You just download most of those papers. They're open source. They're free. You chuck them all in to a model and you have the model read them and you give it strict instructions to only tell you what the papers say. Don't get creative and hallucinatory. Just stick with the stuff. It'll give you a very good answer. So that is my concrete advice for how to cut through the bullshit. Is it as fun as listening to an entertaining and often very visually attractive social media influencer telling you all of the miracles of the world? No, maybe not. Well, I mean, I hate all of that. So for me, it's actually more fun to do this. But anyway.
Well, it exists, unfortunately. I think, try not to hate it. That'll be my advice.
You're right, and it's good advice.
Just try not.
I'm just a bitter old man.
It's like you told me once. I think I came to you in a lethargic state once, and you were like, "There's no point in you beating yourself up for having a pain au chocolat.
Yeah.
Like then you're just sad twice, and then that you'd rather just accept it. Maybe you can even use it in an exercise later.
100%. No, I agree. You're right. I mean, what I should be doing is trying to change what I don't agree with. And what I don't agree with is the way social media currently interacts and interfaces with science. And I don't agree with the incentive structures. So their incentive structures are not to produce honest content. Their incentive structures are to produce content that gets a lot of clicks. And so I can't really blame them for that. And obviously, I shouldn't be blaming them for that. I should be blaming the venture capitalists who are trying to make billions of dollars off of these social media platforms at the cost of our attention and to a great degree our happiness.
Yep. All right, let's wrap this up then.
Yes.
Let's do it so you can get home. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Or aflevering, as we're in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Why not? Thank you very much to Beorn for being here.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
I really hope we can do this again.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be fun. Yeah. If you just want to hear me, just go ham on everything that frustrates me and angers me for 40 minutes, I'm happy to come and do that.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure I'll get better at this as well.
Wait, that's what talk radio is in the United States. I've just become the Rush Limbaugh of neuroscientists. Yeah, that's not a good look. Okay. Anyway,
maybe that can be your figure.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. Well, thanks also to Anthony behind the camera. Say something.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you always. Hello to Marika and Camille Janssen. They'll have to be watching this. If they're not watching the end, then they haven't watched it.
Make them say something to send it to you
As proof?
as proof that they reached the ends.
Pineapples.
They have to watch it all.
Yeah.
That's the deal. Yeah.
All right. That's the key word, pineapples. If they mention it, then you'll know.
Good pineapples. All right. Ta-ra.